Welcome back to Monster Tamer, a 2D Pokemon-like RPG created Phaser 3. Previously, we worked on adding in support for being able to move our monsters around in our party. If you missed the previous videos, there'll be links in the video description to the source code to this point, as well as the complete source code for this video. There'll also be a link to the previous videos if you'd like to catch up, so let's get started. Alright, so our next thing we're going to work on in our monster party scene is we're going to work on adding support for releasing a monster into the wild. So currently in our menu, we have the option for choosing the option to release a monster, and now we just need to go ahead and add in that logic. And so for this menu option, it's going to be a little bit different than our other ones, and what we're going to do is we're going to add a new confirmation menu. So then that way, when a player chooses this option, we're going to give them one last chance to say, hey, are you sure you want to do this? Because this is something that'd be irreversible, and we want to give them an option to back out before they actually release a monster in the game. And so for our confirmation menu, it's just going to be a simple menu like our other menu. It's just going to have the options yes and no. And so to get started with these changes, what we're going to go ahead and do is let's go into our source code. We're going to create a new class to have this logic. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go into our common folder under menu, and we're going to go ahead and add in this new confirmation menu. So for our file, we're going to do confirmation menu.js. And what we're going to go ahead and do is we're just going to copy our logic for our monster party menu. We're going to paste it over there. So now we can go ahead and update our references. Because we're already in our menu, we just go ahead and do a /, and then we can go ahead and get rid of our scene keys. And then for our options, we're just going to have yes, and then we're going to have no. And let's go ahead and update our values. Let's go ahead and get rid of our other ones, and we'll go ahead and update our variable names. And so for our options here, we're just going to do confirmation menu options. Let's go ahead and update our type, and then we're going to do confirmation menu options. We'll go ahead and paste that up here as well. Now for our class name, we're going to go ahead and do confirmation menu. And then for our constructor, we're just going to go ahead and add in our two options. And so we'll have our confirmation menu options, and we will go ahead and do yes first, confirmation menu options, and then we'll go ahead and do no. Then what we'll do is let's get rid of all this logic here. And we don't need previous scene name, so we can go ahead and remove that. Alright, so with our new menu, what we'll want to do is we're going to go ahead and add that to our monster party scene. So let's go ahead and jump over to that class. We'll come up to the top of our class, and let's go to where we create our menu. Let's go ahead and copy that type. We'll go ahead and paste it. And so for this menu, we're going to go ahead and do our confirmation menu. And we'll go ahead and change our property name to be confirmation menu. And then what we'll do is we'll go down to our create method where we create our instance of our menu. And we're going to go ahead and do the same thing for our confirmation menu. So we'll do this. We'll do confirmation menu will equal to a new confirmation menu. And we'll pass in our scene for our reference. And we'll go ahead and pass in our scene for our argument. All right, so what we need to do next is now we need to actually handle our input for our menu. So what we'll do is let's come down to our update method. What we're going to do is we're going to follow a pattern like what we did for our menu here, where if our confirmation menu is visible, we're going to go ahead and call a new method to handle that logic. So what we'll do is we'll copy that code. Let's go ahead and change this to confirmation menu, and we're going to go ahead and call the new method. And we're going to do handle input for, and we're just going to do confirmation menu. I'm going to go ahead and copy that. Let's come down to the bottom of our class. Let's go to where we handle our input for our menu here, and what we're going to do is we're going to put that method right below that one, and then I'm going to go ahead and copy our arguments because they're going to be the same. And let's go ahead and leave this empty for now, and I'm just going to go ahead and update our types as well. Alright, and so before we add in logic for our menu here, let's go ahead and come back up to where we add in our menu options. And so we'll go ahead and open back up our handle input for menu, and we're going to go ahead and get rid of our to do here for when we choose the release option. So what we're going to do first is we're going to go ahead and copy some of our logic we did for our move here. And what we're going to go ahead and do is if we only have one monster in our party, we're not going to allow the player to release that monster from their party. And so what we'll do is we'll go ahead and update our text, and we'll say cannot release last monster in party. And then we'll go ahead and wait for input, and we'll go ahead and hide our menu. If we have more than one monster, then we're going to go ahead and hide our main menu. And then we're going to go ahead and show our new confirmation menu. And so what we'll do is we'll do this.menu. We're going to go ahead and do hide. And then we're going to go ahead and do our confirmation menu. And then we'll go ahead and call our show method to make it visible. And now we're going to go ahead and update our text game object. So let's copy this here. We'll go ahead and paste it. And for our text, we're going to go ahead and say release. And we're going to have our monster's name. So we're going to go ahead and do this, our monsters. And then we need to use our selected party monster index to grab the correct monster. And then we'll go ahead and use the name property. And then we're just going to add a question mark to show, hey, they need to go ahead and confirm this. So now what we'll go ahead and do is let's go over to our preload scene and let's jump right into our monster party scene. So we go ahead and quickly test our changes. And so if we come over to our browser, let's go ahead and choose Carnodesk. If we choose release, we'll see right away our text game objects updated. And now we have our new confirmation menu with yes and no. So now what we need to do is add in our logic inside our new method here. All right, so for our handle input for confirmation menu method, our logic's gonna be very similar to where we handle our main menu. And basically what we want to do is if our back key is pressed, we want to go ahead and close our menu. If our arrow keys are pressed, we'll want to go ahead and update our input and let our menu handle that. And if we choose an option, then we go ahead and do our special business logic. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm just going to copy all of our code here for our handle input for menu. And then we're going to go ahead and paste that down in our new method. And that's what we'll do is we'll start with our back key press. So if we press the back key while our confirmation menu is visible, we want to go ahead and hide that menu. Then we want to go ahead and take the player back to their last action, which would be back on the main menu. And so let's go ahead and show our main menu. And then what we'll do is we want to go ahead and update our text here so that way we no longer show, hey, release this monster. Instead, it's going to say choose an option. And so we're going to go ahead and do this. We're going to go ahead and do update info container text, and then we'll go ahead and return because we'll be done handling our back key. So then if our space key is pressed, then we want to go ahead and call our confirmation menu to handle our player input. And then for our options, this is going to be our confirmation menu options, and we're going to have yes. And let's go ahead and update our menu reference. And so what we'll want to do is we'll want to go ahead and hide our menu. And then we're going to have to do some additional logic. And so I'm just going to put it to do. Otherwise, if it's not yes, we only have one other option. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of all these other options here. And we'll go ahead and remove all that logic. And now what we'll want to do is we're going to assume that they chose no. And so we'll do this. We're going to do our confirmation menu. And we're going to call our hide method. And then we'll go ahead and show our main menu. So we can go ahead and go back to our main menu itself. And we'll go ahead and do show. And then we'll go ahead and update our monster text. So we're just going to copy this here and we'll go ahead and paste it. And then finally, for handling our input for our arrow keys, we're going to need to go ahead and change this to be our confirmation menu, handle our player input. So real quick for our to-do here, I'm just going to console log and we'll say release monster, just so we can see that we trigger this action. So now if we come back to our scene, let's go ahead and test. If we choose Carnodesk, we'll go ahead and do release. If we press up and down, we're now navigating on our confirmation menu. If we choose no, we go back to our main menu. It says choose a monster. And now if we go ahead and choose release, let's go ahead and hit our back key. We go back. And now if we choose yes, we'll see that everything closes and we can see that we hit our trigger for our console log. All right, so for now, when we want to actually release our monster, what we're going to go ahead and do is we'll hide our main menu. Then we want to go ahead and show text to the player says, hey, you are releasing this monster. And then we'll want to go ahead and update our underlying data for our monster party and basically remove that whole object from our array. Then we're going to go ahead and destroy those game objects in our scene. So go ahead and do this. Let's get rid of our to-do. And then real quick, what we're going to do is in case we want to use our confirmation menu for other menu options, we're going to go ahead and add an if statement here to make sure that we're handling only when we're choosing to release a monster. And so we'll do if this menu dot selected menu option is equal to our monster party menu options release, then we'll go ahead and run our logic for removing the monster. So what we'll do is we're going to go ahead and lock our input controls. Then we're going to go ahead and update our text. So I'm just going to go ahead and, so we'll go ahead and do this. And we're going to do our info text game object. We'll call set text. And we're going to go ahead and say you released. And we'll say our monsters. And then we'll do our selected monster party index dot name. So you released your monster name into the wild. So after we set our text, what we're going to go ahead and do is now we want to go ahead and remove our monster. And so we're going to leave the text up for a second before we actually remove all of our game objects. And so we're just going to go ahead and do a delay call. So we'll do this, we'll do time, we'll do our delayed call. I'm just going to do 1 second. So we'll have 1,000 milliseconds. And then for our callback, we're going to go ahead and call a new private method to have all of our logic that's going to actually remove our monster. And so we'll do this, and we're going to go ahead and do remove monster. And then we'll go ahead and unlock our input. So we'll do this, controls, lock input, and we'll set that equal to false. And so if we run all this logic, we'll go ahead and return from our method. So now what we'll do is let's go ahead and come to the bottom of our class and let's add in that new method. And so we have our private remove monster method. All right, so for our remove monster method, we'll want to do 2 things. The first one is we need to update our underlying monster data for our party, and we need to remove our monster's index. We need to go ahead and remove our monster object from our array, and we can use our splice method to do that. Then we want to go ahead and remove all of our other game objects and go ahead and clean them up from our scene. And so go ahead and update our monster data. We'll go ahead and reference our monsters. And then so for our array, we're going to use our splice method. And so we'll do our selected monster party index. And we want to go ahead and remove just one element from our array and clean that up. So then we want to go ahead and update our data manager. And so we'll do our data manager. We're going to go ahead and do store. And we'll use a set, and let's do our data manager store keys, and we'll do monsters and party, and we'll go ahead and pass in this monsters, so that way update our monster party. And so for cleaning up our objects, we'll want to go ahead and remove all those object references from our arrays, and then we want to actually go ahead and destroy them. And so for removing those references, we'll start with our background. And so we'll do this, we'll do our monster party backgrounds, and we want to go ahead and use our splice method there. And we'll do this, our selected monster party index, and we'll remove one element. Now we need to go ahead and do our container. And so for our container, we want to do additional logic because when we remove a container, we want to shift our other containers' positions up to fill in those gaps. So as an example, if I remove Carnodusk, I want to move Ignivolt into our second position here. And so we need to actually move this whole game object. Similarly, if we did Iguanignite, then we want to go ahead and move Carnodusk up and move Ignivolt over. So we'll need to store our reference to that position so we can update all of our other containers. So to make that happen, well, we'll go ahead and make a new variable, do const. We'll do our container to remove, and we'll set that equal to this, our monster containers. We'll use our splice method, so we'll pass in our selected monster party index. We'll go ahead and do one element to remove. And so this is going to return an array of all of the elements that were removed. And so we just need that first one. And then we need to go ahead and store a reference to the position before we clean everything up. And so we'll do a new object, and we'll do previous container position is going to be equal to an object. And on this object, we'll just have our X and Y values. And so we'll do a container to remove X. We'll have container to remove, and we'll do Y. So once we have those values, we can now safely remove that container from our scene. And so to go ahead and do that, what we'll go ahead and do is we'll do container to remove. We'll use our destroy method. And this is going to tell Phaser to go ahead and destroy that game object, and also to destroy any of the child game objects that are inside it. All right, and so by calling the destroy method on our container, what this is going to do is going to tell Phaser to destroy this game object and remove it from basically our display and our update list in our scene. Also, because this is a container, it's also going to do the same thing for all of the children game objects that are inside this container. And so that's one thing to know. If you ever want to destroy your container but keep your game objects, you'll want to remove them from the container before you call that destroy method. So after we cleaned up our container, now we need to start the process of updating our other containers' positions. And so to do that, we're going to go ahead and loop through our monster containers. We'll do this, we'll do our monster containers, and we're going to do for each. And so for our loop here, we'll have our container, and we'll also keep track of our index. And so what we're going to want to do is if the index we're currently processing is less than our selected monster party index, we don't want to do anything. Primarily, like if we remove Carnodusk, our index is going to be 1, so when we process Iguanignite, we don't actually need to move it. We just want to go ahead and start at the game object that's after that index. So like Ignivolt, because that's where we'll start moving our containers around. So to do that, we're just going to add an if statement. So we'll do if our index is less than our selected monster party index, then we just want to go ahead and return. So that way we go to our next iteration of our loop. Then what we'll want to do is grab our container's position and then update it to be our previous container position here. And we'll want to store a reference to it, so then that way we can update this object with the new values. And so to do that, we'll make a new object, and we'll do const, we'll do temp position. We'll set that equal to an object, and we'll do x will be our container.x. Our y will be our container.y. And now we just want to go ahead and update our game object. So we're going to do container set position. And so for our x and y values, we'll use our previous container's position x, our previous container position y. And now we can update, and now we can go ahead and update this previous position to be equal to our new temp position. So then the last thing we'll want to go ahead and do is after we remove our monster, we want to go ahead and move our input cursor up one index. So then that way it's highlighting the monster that filled in the gap that just appeared. And so we're going to do this. We're going to go ahead and do our move player input cursor, and we'll go ahead and pass in up. All right, so real quick, what we did here in our method is basically first we went ahead and cleaned up our underlying data for our monster party. And so we just went ahead and removed the object for the monster that we want to remove from our party. And then we went ahead and store that in our data manager. Then for the rest of our logic here, basically all we're doing is cleaning up those game objects from our phaser scene. And so if we have an array that stores a reference to that object, we go ahead and clean it up. So like with our monster party background here. And then for our containers, we went ahead and destroyed the container that we need to remove. So that's going to do things like remove our image game object here, our text game objects, and then all of our other child objects like our HP bar. Finally, we went ahead and shifted all of the rest of our containers up, so then that way their positions will update. So now with all those changes, we should be able to go ahead and test. So let's go and try removing Carnodesk. If we do yes, we have our message show up, we have our brief period of time, and we'll see here that Ignivolt has now taken the position of Carnodesk. So now if we choose summary, we should see that we select the appropriate monster and we can see those details. I'm going to go ahead and refresh our scene. And so now I'm going to go ahead and remove Iguana Knight. And when I do yes, now we see Carnodesk shifts up, Ignivolt shifts up as well. And then one last change, I'm just going to go ahead and try removing Ignivolt. And so if we do, we should now highlight and select Carnodesk, but then our other monsters should not be removed. Our other monsters should not be removed. Then finally, I'm going to go ahead and remove Carnodesk. All right, so now we have one monster in our party. Let's go ahead and test our other option to make sure we show our text that we can't release our monster. Oh, all right, so it looks like we have a bug. So if we come back to our code, let's come back to where we handle our menu options. And so when we choose to release our monster, yes, we didn't actually call our return after we did our logic here. And so we want to do the same thing when we choose move. So we'll go ahead and fix that bug. And now let's go ahead and try releasing our two monsters, and then we'll try releasing our third one. All right, so now we just have Iguana Knight. If we choose release, we'll say, oh, cannot release the last monster in your party. Our player has to provide confirmation. If we do move, we can say we cannot move our monster. All right, so for one last change, we want to make sure we persist this data when we save our game. So what we'll do is let's jump to our preload scene. We're going to go ahead and go into our world scene. Now what we'll go ahead and do is let's go ahead and go into our monster party scene. Let's go ahead and remove Carnodesk. We see remove our monster and game object. If we go back to our world scene and we go back into our monster party, we see we just have our two monsters. Let's go ahead and do save. And if we refresh our scene, we should load that data. Go into our monster party scene, we just have those two monsters. All right, so the last thing we're going to do is let's go ahead and revert our change for our preload scene to go back to our title scene. And that way our game's back to how it was. All right, with that brings this video to an end, and that actually wraps up our section on supporting multiple monsters in our game. So as a reminder, there is a link in the description of the video to the complete source code for this video, and as always, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the content. If you did enjoy the video, please consider liking the video and hitting the bell icon to be notified when the next video in the series is released. For more great Phaser 3 content, please see the links on your screen now.